while. So I've just come back from a play that happened locally, and now I find myself, I think after every play I watch, I find myself extremely drawn to theater and drama and all the inner machinations and technical stuff of the theater. And I, impulse, decided to make a video about all the plays I have. Read and unread, by the way, because I have not read a good portion of these. We don't need to talk about it. We don't need to get into how much of my books I have read. And by the way, I'm still dressed up in theater attire. Like, I'm all dolled up. I couldn't wait to make this because I feel like I'm gonna lose inspiration if I wait until tomorrow. It's like, where's my phone? Yeah, it's midnight. It's 18 past midnight. And I've made a cup of tea, and set up my camera to talk about drama, works of drama. Strap in, grab a cup of tea. We're gonna talk about plays. I think all of these plays are thrifted. The only play that isn't thrifted came secondhand from my mother. I think it might be prudent to start with my non-Shakespeare works first. Because Shakespeare is gonna take up a large chunk of my time, and let's knock these out beforehand, yeah? The first of these is The Crucible. It's a classic. It's about the Salem witch trials and the hysteria that happened in Salem among the Puritans. Arthur Miller wrote this in the time of McCarthyism, which is when everybody was, there was a lot of like paranoia within the United States. Everyone thought that communists were everywhere. It was the Red Scare, and Senator Joseph McCarthy's was really fueling all this paranoia, and it was all sort of neighbor against neighbor, man against man. This play draws a lot of parallels between the Salem witch trials and 1950s America, both eras being marked with extreme paranoia and distrust of your neighbors. In both situations there is extreme political unrest, which is why this book is a classic. The Trial of God by Elie Wiesel. I haven't seen it mentioned. I have never seen this book mentioned anywhere. Elie Wiesel wrote Night, which is an acclaimed and celebrated Holocaust memoir. So Elie Wiesel is a Jewish writer. I haven't read this play yet. I really want to read this play, but I've been reading other things right now. This play is based around mid-17th century political unrest, especially within a village in Ukraine. I don't know a lot of the history behind this book, I'll be honest, but the book is primarily centered around the idea of putting God on a trial for all the wrongs that he has been allowing to happen. So they put God on trial. It's not really God, it's someone standing in as God, and they ask him all these questions like, how do you allow such terrible things to happen? And it's like a court trial that's happening with God being prosecuted. I think it's a really interesting premise. I actually think about this book all the time. I have no idea why I haven't read it. One of Elie Wiesel's lesser known works, and based off of his experiences in Auschwitz. Definitely an important theological novel, as well as its ties to the Holocaust and to the unrest within the area of Ukraine in the 1650s. 1649, close enough. This is The Importance of Being Earnest, is by Oscar Wilde. This is a wildly popular play. I've heard lots of people recommend this, lots of people say this is a great play. I have not read it. A lot of these plays I have not read because I didn't really discover plays until like a couple years ago, and I've been in between reading prose and stuff. So I haven't run through a lot of these plays, but I'm excited for all of them, deeply. It's apparently ingeniously witty, as anything Wilde creates. I think it's kind of like a rom-com. I'm not sure. It's something like four people go to an estate and take on personas and try to romance each other, and a housemaid steps in. I'm not sure, but I do own this play. I actually own 2 copies of this play. One of them is back here. I'm very excited to read this. Okay, so the next play is my baby. This is the 3 Theban plays by Sophocles. It's Antigone, Oedipus the King, and Electra. This is kind of 3 plays in one. These are all tragedies. They're all ancient Greek. And they're all kind of iconic stories that make up a large part of the pantheon of great Greek dramas. My copy has been translated by H.D.F. Kiddo, which I do regret because I have seen a lot of other people with really cool poetic translations. I'm not sure who it was by, but there's a specific translator out there that translates these stories and plays from ancient Greek to really poetic English, and really retains a lot of the feeling and emotion that was originally intended for those lines. This is more straight up. I'm kind of, with this copy, it's kind of more for the plot and the characters more than the actual writing itself. The writing itself is tragic and wonderful, but I have seen translations where it's more sorrowful. I read these over the summer, best time of my life. This book is really annotated, really dog-eared, full of pen where I'm like just screaming. Antigone is about a girl in the kingdom of Thebes in ancient Greece. And her father and her 2 brothers have all died in war. There's this whole family drama that happens before this, but basically what you need to know is that her father and her 2 brothers have died in war, and it's only her and her sister left. So her uncle's taken over ruling the kingdom, and her uncle is a tyrant, to say the least. And he forbids her from burying her brother's body, but he defies him because she wishes to obey her family duties and her responsibility as the surviving relative of her brother. So she buries the body despite what her uncle tells her, and it's a tragedy, so everybody ends up dying in some way or another. I like both of the heroines in this book are extremely rebellious, and I like that a lot. I think I love a good, I love it when women stick it to the man, literally stick it to the man, and when they rebel and they do the opposite of what they're supposed to, because that's what they want to do, and they're doing it for their own values rather than listening to the ruling man. And I don't know, I have a thing about feminine rage. Anyways, moving on. Oedipus the King. I haven't read Oedipus Rex, or I think there's another one that's like Oedipus at Carthage, something like that. I've only read Oedipus the King. If you studied classics, it's a notorious story. Let me explain Oedipus to you. I don't know how to set up the premise to this story without completely spoiling it. The seer tells Oedipus that he's doomed. And Oedipus is like, why? And the seer is like, the seer drops so many hints as to why, and to the reader it's immediately obvious. Like, okay, yeah, I get it. But Oedipus is just like, what? Why? It doesn't make any sense. And it's right in front of his nose, and it's really infuriating, but also really funny. Hey, skip. I'll put a time on here, but skip if you don't want to hear the ending to Oedipus the King. Okay, but Oedipus is married to his own mom, and he killed his dad. But when he was a child, he was like exiled. He was moved somewhere else as a child, so he didn't know who his parents were. he accidentally kills his dad without knowing that he's his dad. And then he goes back to the kingdom, marries his mother, and becomes king. And he doesn't know she's his mother until he finds out, and it ends with him gouging his own eyes out. Something so chaotic that it could only have been a product of ancient Greece, ancient Rome. All the ancients were so chaotic. So many random things happening back then. But anyways, I love that story because it's, I don't know, it's a classic, and it's really dumb how Oedipus doesn't see that what everyone's telling him. He doesn't see what everyone's telling him until it's too late. I was writing all over this book like, what are you doing? Are you dumb? Are you dumb? It's like so obvious to everyone else. I think that's dramatic irony, right? That's dramatic irony. Very funny, but very infuriating. And then Electra is my baby. Electra is about, okay, so there's a lot of history that happens before the play, again, as with Antigone. But basically what happens is, as a child, how do I set this up? Electra's father was away at war, and her mother, there's like so much drama to explain behind this, but basically her mother and her mother's lover killed her father, and they were planning to kill Electra's brother too. But Electra, as a young child, she was like, okay, I know what I have to do. So she took her young baby brother and saved him from being murdered by sending him away. In her brother's absence, she grows up in the rule of her mother and her mother's lover. They're tyrants, and he basically is like neglected, and they hate her. And Electra starts with the most like sorrowful lines ever, because Electra's just lamenting her life. Like, she's waiting for her brother to come back and save her from the treachery of her mother, and she just feels so suppressed and so lonely. And it's like, it's sad girl. It's sad girl literature. I don't mean to typify this amazing play by saying it's a sad girl play, but to be honest, it's pretty sad. And it was very very deep. You can tell it's very deep, the extent of her suffering and how she vocalizes it. She vocalizes her sorrow so ardently. He's just wallowing in her misery at the beginning of this book. Okay, we're gonna run through all of the Shakespeare, I think, right now. But before addressing this giant stack of plays, I think we need to talk about how to read Shakespeare. I'll probably end up making a separate video on this, but Shakespeare is incredibly difficult to grasp as a person in the modern world who speaks modern English. And I can't read Shakespeare without a significant amount of help from the internet. So I usually look up a modern day translation of Shakespeare, and I always have it handy. I always have to have my phone with me and my pen while I read Shakespeare, so I can like look up what this means, write it down in the margin, and move on. But mainly my method when I take apart Shakespeare is I try to understand everything I can on my own, and if I've read through a passage 4 times, it still isn't making sense, I'll look it up on my phone. But I try to do as much as I can on my own, and I think that really helps with my understanding of the way he structures his language. And I do recommend that other people do this as well, because it not having any safeguards helps you along. Helps you to really understand what's going on and to help you get a grasp on Shakespeare on your own. Let's attack this monstrous pile of books. I will admit I have only read 3 of these, but I am looking forward to reading the others. Okay, I'm gonna sort these actually into histories, tragedies, comedies. Yeah, so actually I don't know how to classify these. I don't even know what some of these are about, but I will know what they're about when I read them, eventually. The first is histories. I have Richard III and Julius Caesar. I don't know how much to say about these. They're about Richard III and Julius Caesar. My English teachers told me that it's not good to start with histories when you're reading Shakespeare because they're extremely difficult to grasp as a beginner. And I'd like to say I'm not a beginner, but I've only read 3 plays by him. I'm a beginner. Tentatively, these are the tragedies. I don't actually know the make of some of these because, like I said, I've only read 3 of them. The Tempest is about, I think they're on an island or something. I have no idea. I have the Tempest. I probably shouldn't say it right. The Scottish play. Put it on the screen. The Scottish play. I actually read this very recently and I love it so much. I love it so much. I should make an entire separate video just talking about this play because it's so great. I'll talk about I'll talk about Lady for hours on end. Extremely complex character. I think feminine rage. I think feminine ambition also, and deep guilt, deep unresolved guilt. It is very, very funny at parts. Not for the characters, but for the readers. It's very, very funny, and there's so many funny interactions that go on in here. Lots of murder too. I think Shakespeare as a whole is just a fun time because so many random stuff happens in Shakespeare, and it's like, what's going on anymore? It's very drama. If you love your school drama, you're gonna love Shakespeare because that's all it is, and it's like drama, but you can kill people. That's Shakespeare. That's it. They should put that on the front of every Shakespeare book. Drama, but you can kill people. That'll get people's attentions. I should be in charge of the Shakespeare marketing company. Anyways, this is King Lear. I tried to read it during the summer and then I lost interest because I was feeling particularly flighty. This is about a king who goes mad. I think it's also a tragedy. Hamlet, I think, is just really sad about everything. Hamlet, tragedy, and that's all I know. There's a guy named Hamlet. Oh, and Ophelia is in here too. That's about all I know. It's pitiful how little I know about Shakespeare. I have this whole collection of books, and I don't know anything about most of them. Othello, I actually read Othello. It was a great time. So much, this is very, very high school drama because it's like people are breaking apart marriages. There are homewreckers in here. I also love it because there's like, the villain in this book is like such a classic villain. Like I can literally see him rubbing his hands together in a corner and snickering. I think he did that at some point in this play. He definitely like laughed wickedly in some point of this play, and he's like such an archetype of a villain, and it's great. he's funny. It's not really funny for the characters, but it's funny for us, the readers. It's not intended to be funny for us, the readers, but it ends up being funny for us, the readers. Much Ado About Nothing. No idea what this is about. It's a comedy. I think about the title a lot. I don't know why I'm entranced with the title Much Ado About Nothing. I don't know if it's the rhythm it has, but this title has some sort of pull on me. And I have no idea what it signifies because I don't know what happens in this play. Twelfth Night, comedy. Merchant of Venice, literally not a slightest clue what this is about. I assume it is about a merchant in Venice. Indeed, it is about a merchant in Venice. A Midsummer Night's Dream. This is my favorite Shakespeare. This is my favorite Shakespeare. On the 3 Shakespeares I've read, first is A Midsummer Night's Dream. Next is the Scottish play. Third is Othello. A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's great. It's the original rom-com with fairies and a lot of tomfoolery and like spells and magic potions, and I love it so much. It's very full of magic and whimsy and all that wonderful stuff, which I love. And it's great. It's a great time. This was my first Shakespeare and I loved every second of it. So if you're thinking about getting into Shakespeare, definitely recommend this as your first Shakespeare. That's my entire collection of plays. A lot of these plays are extremely, I think all of these plays are like highly intellectual plays, or plays that seem highly intellectual, but also they're very, if you get past the initial hesitation of trying to read a play rather than prose, and you just let yourself imagine the characters on a stage rather than on the page, that rhymed. It's reading plays is really manageable if you imagine that they're on a stage and you're watching the events and dialogue play out. But that's all my plays. I hope they're to your liking. I hope you feel inspired to read some Shakespeare now, or Antigone, or Electra, or The Importance of Being Earnest, or The Trial of God. Any of these plays, they're all very good plays, with the exception of all the Shakespeare I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna go to bed. I'm gonna go to bed post-haste. I'm tired. I've just been to a play for 3 hours, and then I've talked about plays for 1 hour. I'm done with plays. I'm going to bed. Bye.